the Coach Dave Academy Lap Guide. I'm Kieran Harrison, and we're back in the GT4 Aston Martin for week 3 at Barber Motorsports Park. So without further ado, let's get started. There we go. That was the full speed lap around Barber Motorsports Park in the Aston GT4. I've now brought the replay to the last corner just before we start the fast lap, and I'm going to take you through the lap, just slowly pointing out all the driving lines, all the braking points, curbs to look out for, things like that. So yeah, let's just get started. So as I say, we're just coming around the last corner here to start the lap. It's not a very long front straight. There's not really a massive straight on this track. So it can be quite full on because you don't really get a rest. But yeah, approaching turn 1, I think I'm braking about halfway between the 2 and the 1 board, something like that. You can see just as my rear's going past the 2. From the cockpit, that feels like you're a bit further up. But yeah, just gently on the brakes here, down to 4th gear. Looking for to try and, it's a blind apex, so it's quite difficult to judge. You just kind of have to get used to the turn-in point. But I'm turning in, just starting to turn in, just as we're going past the 1, as you can see, a little bit of steering input. You don't really want to hit the inside curb because it's quite massive. Although the Aston takes it quite well, it still isn't ideal in this particular corner. There's a bit of a compression on the apex, so you get a bit more grip than you're expecting. But you basically just want to run it all the way out to this grass without going in it. Bring the car across to the left just a little bit to open up the next corner. And then we're braking as soon as we're turning in to the next right. Down from 4th to 3rd for this one. On this occasion, I'll run out to the middle of the track and get a bit of a cutback exit, just apexing at this curb here. But you can definitely make an argument to stay tighter the whole way around. You will sacrifice the exit a little bit, but it's such a long corner that it can kind of work out either way. So just give it a try, whichever one you prefer. This line that I took here is a bit easier to get on the power, so it might be preferable. But then just beware that you're opening the door a little bit if somebody wanted to nip up the inside. But yeah, once we're at this curb, we're easily flat on the power, and it does grip because of the compression. Gives you an easily enough grip. Over this crest, something I noticed is it sounds like you want to go to 5th early as the weight comes off the rear, the revs spike a little bit, but I find if you hold it in 4th just a little bit longer until the weight settles on the car again, then you shift. You actually gain a little bit of time. Yeah, this is another one of the really short straights. It's probably the best overtaking opportunity on the track, but it's still not a great one. But you can kind of stuff it up the inside if you have to. This corner here, we're just looking for the 2 board. I'm braking quite hard on the 2. As you can see there, I'm just applying the brakes at the 2. Braking quite hard as we can get away with without going straight on the ABS, and then just fading off the brakes as we're turning in. You want to aim here to get a bit of a cutback exit. Just stay in 3rd gear with this car. That isn't normal in most cars, but this car's got weird gearing at low speed. But if you get quite a nice straight exit, you can actually really plant the power quite hard. As you can see, I'm already full throttle there, just as I'm about halfway through the corner. Just a tiny little confidence lift after that point. But yeah, if you do get a nice exit line, like you don't want to hit the curbs on the inside. You can see I'm slightly off them here, but that's honestly a marginal loss compared to hitting the curb, where you would actually lose time because it upsets the balance and then you don't get as good traction. And then this next one is in many ways the most difficult part of the track, because you're kind of turning and braking, and then there's a bit of a triple chicane to navigate. But I'm braking just before the one, as you can see here. I'm not actually fully off the throttle, but I've started to apply the brakes. You've got to brake quite gently to allow the car to turn. I go down to fourth quite early in this one, and then you want to just take a little bit of the inside curb. If you take too much, it spits you out wide, and that's no good. Just a little bit like I did there, doesn't really upset the car. And then you've just got to cut over this next curb. You see how far I get over it. The whole car is over it or on the grass. There is a slowdown here if you're not careful, like if you go too far left, but this much is fine. It's not even an off track. And it's kind of what you need to do because it allows you to carry more speed through the first part if you run wide and then cut this one, and then you get a better line into the next part. But just be careful braking over this because it does upset the car a little bit. You've kind of got to release a bit of brake pressure. You can, if you watch my brake trace, just as I'm going over the curb, it released the pressure and then increase it again. Yeah, it's really tough to get this one slowed down because it's so steep downhill afterwards. But yeah, at least the camber on the last part helps you. Just make sure not to hit too much of this inside curb again because it is quite big. And as you can see, I'm actually very early on the power. I'm pretty much full throttle here just after I pass this apex. And again, because of the natural banking of the corner, it really helps grip, so you can just go flat early. This one in a GT3 I think is flat out, but it's a bit of a lift in this car. I'm taking as much curb on the left here as I can get away with, just to open up the next part as much as possible. And then again, taking quite a lot of curb on the second part. There's no off track for doing this, although I think I'm pretty much on the limit on the left here. Any further and you probably would get one. But yeah, just a little lift as you can see in the middle. Just as I'm coming off the curb, a little bit of a lift, and then full throttle through the rest of it. Just staying off the grass there. It takes a bit of getting used to, just so you can get a feel for that. In some of my practice laps, I was lifting a lot more than that. But if you get the curbs right, like I did here, it seems to help the car just get through there much faster. This one's another blind entry. This is kind of similar to turn one, or at least it looks similar to turn one on the entry. Just after the two, I'm braking. But it's again just gentle braking down one gear. In fact, I don't even think I downshift until the second apex. So ignore that. Just stay in fifth through this part, braking and turning in at the same time. As soon as you stop braking, I'm turning in. As you can see, I'm taking quite a lot of curb, but don't take too much because it really fires the car up on two wheels, and then it just sort of moves across the track too much and really tightens the angle into the next corner. But this car does take the curbs quite well. It settles really quickly. So as you can see, I'm hitting the curb, and then as I get to about the middle of the track, sort of middle line between the two corners, then I start to brake, and I'm just trail braking it in. This is the point when I downshift to fourth for this part. Just using the brakes to help it rotate. I don't like to use this curb. I don't find it helps. You can get away with it. It's quite flat, but I just prefer to stick to the flat bit of the track here rather than going up against the curb. But then I'm getting flat on the power, but as you can see, there's a bit of a crest coming over the hill, so then the rear goes light and you lose traction, especially because you're turning quite hard at this point. You can see the steering input I've got on still at this point. So you've just got to be a little bit careful with the throttle just to make sure you don't do a drift and then end up in the grass. And then as I get over the top of the crest, I'm back to full throttle. You can see it just there as I come over the top. Now I'm full throttle. Now that I'm confident I'm going to stay on the track on the curb. And then immediately you're thrown into this next corner, which is another really long one. I like to take all of this curb. It's just super flat. It's just an extension of the track on the inside, so make sure to do that. And I've just got a tiny bit of brake input, as you can see there, just down here, and a tiny bit of throttle input. Just a little bit of brake to help it rotate into the corner, and then I'm applying the power again briefly to push through. I find that if you go in too fast, you end up really wide and there's less grip out there. The most you want to be across the track here at any point, in my opinion at least, is pretty much the middle in between these two black lines that you can see here. So just before the final turning in point for this next apex, I'm right in the middle of these two lines. I think that's pretty much where you want to be. You can be a little bit tighter and you can be a little bit wider. Either way, it doesn't really make much difference, but somewhere around there is good. Down to third for this part. You're down to third after you get on the brakes again. Through this whole part, by the way, I'm holding it in fourth until I'm back on the brakes. And then I think quite late, about now, I'm down to third, just to help it rotate into the corners, into the next corner. I take a bit of curb here, but not too much, although I have on other occasions taken more curb here, and it seems to work anyway. The car just absorbs it quite nicely, especially with all the weight on the outside of the car. Then you just want to make sure you're all the way back to the right before you turn into the final corner, because obviously there's a little mini straight afterwards, so it's still important to get a good exit. So I'm aiming for that little sliver of curb there. I'm just aiming to basically turn in once the car's pointing at that, and then use it just as a bit of extra track to widen it on the entry. And then this one is another one that you want to just take a little bit of curb at most. You don't want to take much because it affects your traction and your exit. On this occasion, I do run slightly on the grass, but as you can see, I managed to stay full throttle. I was quite surprised. I thought it was going to be a bit leery there or make the traction control kick in, but it seemed to maintain perfect traction. I don't know if it was because I was already quite straight at the point that I got onto the curb, but just a little slide initially and then it was fine. But yeah, it's quite a short lap, so that brings you back across the line to start another one. Then you're right back into it again with turn one. So there we have it. That was the full lap guide for the Aston Martin at Barber Motorsports Park. I really like this track, although I know that it's not always the most popular. The key thing with it really, it's got such a flow to it. You kind of have to chain the corners together, and with this car in particular, you can actually use some of the curbs. It's just about learning which ones to use and which ones not to, and how much. But once you get the hang of that, it really grips up nicely with some of the camber you have on the exits. So it's quite a fun car to drive around here. But yeah, that's it for me. So thanks for tuning into another lap guide from Coach Dave Academy and myself. We do these every week for a variety of different cars. So for any more information you want on lap guides or setups or anything that we do, check out the Discord or the website and you'll find everything you need to know there. But that's it for me, so I'll see you in the next one.